And just like that, another year has come and gone. Hello everybody, welcome to 2019, a reading year in review. I am so excited to do this video. I have been doing these since 2012. So how long is that? 18, 19, 8 years. 8 years. 8 years! That's crazy. In this wrap up, I will be giving you some statistics about the books I read this year. I'm going to be going over the prettiest book I read. That's just a completely subjective thing, but that I like doing it. My new favorite author, my favorite genre of the year, and my favorite books of the year. This was a crazy year for me. 2018, I just flat out hated. Bad year. Went through a terrible breakup. I was in the midst of a master's program I hated. I just was very unhappy. In fact, have never been more unhappy in my entire life. This year was kind of a recovery year and a transition year. I moved from one side of the country to the other. I went from working part-time to full-time because I'm not a student anymore. But as for reading, I had a very blah kind of reading year. I read a fair amount. I read 26 books. Spoiler for the statistics section. But most of those books were 3-star kind of average reads. There weren't that many books that I loved. And in fact, I only gave 2 books 5 stars this year, which is abysmal. Because I think it's fun, let's start with the statistics. The shortest book I read was Carol Ann Duffy's The Other Country. This has 53 pages. It's a poetry collection. The longest book I read is Eclipse by Stephanie Meyer. And this has 629 pages. Quite a difference. Quite a difference. In total, I read 26 books. 2 were poetry collections, 7 were graphic novels, 3 were nonfiction books, and there were 14 novels. And then if we break that down even further, 15 books I would categorize as adult, and 11 I would categorize as young adult. So it's almost still even, but just slightly more adult fiction this year. Or not just fiction, books. Now let's move on to probably my favorite section of this video, which is my Bookish Memories. This is where I look at all of the cool bookish things that I did this year. So much of my life is book related, and I love that. This year, I started dating a library technician. Not only do I love him, but it's been very cool to spend so much more time in libraries and hearing about libraries and talking about libraries. It's been a lot more library exposure than I usually have this year. In an absolute career highlight, I got to interview Michelle Obama, Margaret Atwood, and Melinda Gates this year as part of the YouTube Originals BookTube show. Which is just crazy. The Melinda Gates episode hasn't come out yet. It comes out in 2020, right in January. But I will link you down below if you want to check those out. Absolutely crazy to think that I get to talk to these incredible authors. And just all-around pretty amazing people. Ugh. As I mentioned, I moved. And what that meant was that I got to set up new bookshelves. Now, that sounds pretty lame when compared to meeting Michelle Obama, but it's a huge part of my life. I look at these shelves every single day and I love them so much. I'm really proud of them. I think they turned out really cool. I made them with my dad with materials I bought at Rona, and I just think that they're really cool. By the way, I think that Rona is Canadian. It's like Home Depot. 2 things I'm really proud of this year are Books Unbound, my new book podcast, which I adore so much. Me and my co-host Raylene started making the podcast this year, and we love it, and we've released an episode every week since we started, and we want to keep doing that until we die. It's the best ever, and I love it so much. But the other project, also with Raylene, was running the Reading Rush this summer. So previously called Booktubeathon, we changed the name, we made a website, and 16,000 people signed up to the website, which was overwhelming and stressful and scary, but also so exciting, so just motivating, and it was truly a crazy, crazy reading bookish time. I remember sitting on the curb at like 2 a.m. in the morning crying about the fact that the website wasn't working because so many people had signed up and we hadn't expected it. And then I'd have these glimmers where I'd be like, this is all because of reading. Like, that's so awesome. Something I always think we should celebrate is going to new and beautiful bookstores. And this year I got to go to Atlantis Books in Greece. Oh my goodness. This is on the island of Santorini and Ia, and it is so beautiful. Absolutely Shakespeare and Company inspired. It was such a cool shop on such a cool island. I loved that trip. But yeah, that bookshop was beautiful. This year I made bread because of a book I read called Sourdough, which is hilarious. I just think that's so funny. I make bread like every week now, which is so funny. And finally, I made a documentary about a bookstore here in the new town. Well, I kind of live near it. The new town that I moved to. I found this really cool secondhand bookstore and I talked to the owner and I said, please let me make a documentary about your bookstore. And she was like, okay. And I got to do that, which was so much fun. And I got to premiere it at Buffer Festival, which was amazing. But also I got to share it with all of you. So, cool year! Now, let us get on to the awards. My prettiest book. What this means is my favorite book design. My book cover of choice. I love book design. I think it is such a fascinating artwork, and I've talked about this probably every year that I've done this video, but I just find it so fascinating that someone's job is to like read this book or get the essence of this book and then put that on a cover in a way that both pulls people in and shares what the book is about. I just think that's so interesting. So my favorite book cover of the year is My Year of Rest and Relaxation. This is such a beautiful book in my opinion. Now, I think that this might be a controversial pick. I think most of my picks in the past haven't been controversial. They've been very like, yeah, that's a nice cover. I've seen people like having mixed opinions about this boy, but I just think it's so cool to have this, I don't know if it's Renaissance period, but this old style. I don't know enough about costume and hair to decide and decipher what era this painting is from, but to have this painting that is so old, but then to have this hot pink text on it in such a modern font is like such a juxtaposition. So I love it. It's so pink. The next category is my new favorite author. So this is just the author I read this year that I am like a big fan of now, that any book they release, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna get that book. And that for me is Brenna Thumler, who wrote Sheets. I was obsessed with this graphic novel, utterly loved it, thought that the art style was so beautiful, I thought the story was amazing, and I want Brenna Thumler to illustrate my life. I really do. If I could live in a Brenna Thumler universe, I'd be okay with that. I know that the sequel to this book is coming out next year, and I'm gonna get it. And when I finished this book, I literally went online and I ordered the other book she's illustrated, which is Anne of Green Gables. So I'm there. I'm a Brenna Thumler fan now. This next category is kind of a weird one, and it is favorite genre of the year. And this is just because I think it's really interesting to look at a year and to kind of decipher, what did you read a lot of this year? Maybe for some reason you just read a lot of poetry this year, or for some reason you gravitated towards romance books this year, or you read a couple of books set in Arkansas and you really enjoyed that. That seems very specific, but it's possible. So I just like looking at this and looking at what happened in my reading year. Graphic novels. The winner is graphic novels. Now obviously this is more of a form rather than a genre. You can have any type of genre within graphic novels, so take it or leave it. I understand. It's my video. I can do what I want, bend the rules all I want, because I made the rules. Like I mentioned earlier, I only gave 5 stars to 2 books this year, and both of them were graphic novels. So I just really had a great time reading graphic novels this year, and I've always enjoyed graphic novels, but I just kind of had a little uptick this year, and I'm really excited to read more graphic novels in 2020. If you watched my Christmas book haul, which is out on my channel now, you'll see that I picked up some really exciting graphic novels, and I want to read them all in January. But enough is enough. Let me get to my favorite books of the year. Starting at number 4, we have My Year of Rest and Relaxation. Yes, my Prettiest book is also one of my favorite books. This is a book that took me for a wild ride. A book about a girl who wants to try and hibernate for a year. It's strange. It's bizarre. It doesn't have much of a plot, but at the same time, I found it to be a page turner. I was compelled by the main character to try and figure out what was it that she was trying to get out of this year of sleeping, and learning about the world that she lived in, where did this person come from, why does she treat her friends this way, etc. I just found her to be fascinating, and I also found it to be a really big inspiration for my own writing. So really enjoyed this, really recommend it. I think that if you're looking for something that's really well written and is a little odd, a little strange, and very unique, this be your book. In number 3, the third slot, comes Blue Horses by Mary Oliver. So Mary Oliver passed away right at the beginning of the year, or right at the end of last year, and everyone was posting about her on Instagram, and I was seeing her poems everywhere, and I thought, well, I've always meant to check out Mary Oliver. This is it. I'll just do it now. So I went out, and I didn't know which one to get. I just saw this collection, and I thought, I like that cover. One place to start is the same as another. So I picked this one up, and I loved it. I didn't give it 5 out of 5 stars just because I didn't love every single poem. This is why it's so impossible to rank poetry and anthology on a 5-star scale, because how can you do that? Like, you can love some poems immensely, but if you don't love every single one, then you can't really give it 5 stars, I feel. But so many of the poems in here I adored, I just loved, and it made me so excited to read more Mary Oliver. I think, like, I went out and I bought 2 more of her books, and I really want to reread this. It was so good. If you're looking for poetry that is optimistic and generous and inspiring and beautiful and full of nature, then this is who you should check out. I'm actually really hesitant to mention that she's a nature writer, even though it is probably one of her most distinguishing things. Like, if people were to say, ask me what is the thing that Mary Oliver writes about, it's nature. Like, that's just the thing. Then I'm always hesitant to bring it up because I feel like that can scare a lot of people off. I feel like a lot of people are like, oh my god, I don't want to read about someone talking about trees and birds and flowers. No, it's not that. It's just about the natural world and our place in it, and just trust me. Just trust me. In number 2, we have Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, by Muriko Tamaki and illustrated by Rosemary Valero O'Connell. I loved this book. This was such a visceral reaction. So, like I mentioned, I went through a really big breakup. Wow, was it epic. Woo. And just thought about it for a second and then, woohoo, wow, never want to go through that again. Without getting too personal, that was my first truly horrendous, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking breakup. And after going through that experience, love songs, like breakup songs, mean so much more to me. Movies and books where characters go through a breakup, impact me so much more. I cry at breakups in a way I never did before. And that's kind of what happened here. Like, my heart was so open to this story when it happened, or when I happened to read it. It's about a character whose name is Freddie, and obviously she has a girlfriend named Laura Dean, and they keep breaking up because Laura Dean is a piece of trash. And it's about whether or not they can make it work, and about what Freddie wants and what she needs, and what she thinks of herself. And it's beautifully illustrated. It's just so good. And in my final spot, the #1 book for me for 2019 was Sheets by Brenna Thumler. Obviously, we all saw that coming. So Sheets is the story of a ghost and a girl. So the girl works in her family's laundrette. They live above the laundrette. And Wendell is a ghost of a young boy who died, and we don't really know what happened, but he is a ghost now. It's about how their stories interact. It's about him finding the laundrette. It's about her trying to take care of her family, who is suffering with the grief of losing their mother. It's a beautiful story with beautiful characters, but most of all for me, the art just destroyed me, like in the best way. Every time I would be so excited to flip the page because I knew the next page was just going to be the most beautiful thing. And every time I was not disappointed. So impressed with this, so excited to read the sequel next year. I really recommend this. A really sweet story, but also a really emotional story, and a powerful one, and an optimistic one in the end. So, I loved it. I really, truly loved it. And these are my top 4 books of the year. All pink and blue, pink and blue. I would love to hear from you guys. How was your 2019 reading year? What was your favorite book of the year? And what was one cool bookish thing that you did this year? Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!